everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Avoiding Common Medallion Design Traps and How ER Studio Enterprise Edition Prevents the Mistakes that Break Consistency and Governance. My name is Angela Everly. I'm a solutions architect here at IDERA with ER Studio, and I'm excited to spend the next 45 minutes or so with you guys today. Before we dive in, a couple of quick housekeeping notes though. We're using GoToMeeting today, so your microphones are muted by default. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the questions panel at any time. My coworkers are monitoring that and try to answer those as they pop in. If not, I'll try to save some time at the end to also answer any questions that may have come through. The session is being recorded today, so if you've registered, you should be receiving a recording of that as well. And if you're interested in Medallion Architecture, this session is for you. Over the next 45 to 60 minutes, we're going to be walking through why Medallion Architectures drift and fragment over time, the 5 common design traps that break that consistency and governance, and most importantly, how we, with the ER Studio Team Edition, can help prevent these traps. And then we'll finish off with a live demo in the tool, kind of showing the modeling of the bronze, silver, and gold layers in a repeatable, governed way, using naming standards, domains, glossary, and repository version control. Most organizations start with this ideal, clean, well-architected medallion architecture. But over time, inconsistencies creep in, definitions drift, governance becomes reactive instead of built in. The first 6 months are wonderful. It's that honeymoon phase, new dashboards, data pipelines, lots of excitement around it. Then problems start to appear. But it's not technology, the talent, or even the medallion concept itself. It's different teams start implementing their own silver layer logic, or definitions for key metrics diverge. Data stewards can't trace where a field came from without pinging 3 different people. And then auditors and regulatory folks no longer trust the lineage. And that is because there's no shared enforced modeling standards, not a lot of governed business terms, lineage is lacking. You have multiple versions of the same logical entities, and then that all-encompassing tribal knowledge, where it's all your knowledge is built into the SQL code or notebook somewhere in someone's office or different pipelines. So let's get into those top 5 traps that tend to throw these data models and medallion architecture off. Trap number 1 is that bronze layer sprawl. You have an inconsistent raw layer, which equals lost lineage. It becomes a dumping ground. You have multiple ingestion patterns, naming schemes, partial schemas, no clear source of truth for the raw data. ER Studio prevents this with structured submodels, naming standards, and controlled model check-in, check-out to prevent duplicates. The second trap is the silver layer. I call it a split personality, but it's because you have the different teams that come in and set up their different rules, their different definitions, multiple versions of that layer. So then you have conflicting business definitions, no single governed, standardized semantic layer and source of truth for those calculations and different things. And ER Studio helps centralize those rules and mapping and attribute definitions. Trap number 3, gold by PowerPoint. Your KPIs and definitions living in decks instead of the metadata. So KPIs drift over time, no authoritative reference for that gold customer revenue, what it actually means, how it's computed. ER Studio eliminates that by bringing all those definitions into governed metadata. You can connect directly to your model and backed by lineage. The business glossaries can be linked to your logical and physical models, definitions, naming standards, etc. Trap number 4, invisible lineage. If you can't trace it, you can't govern it. I was on this side of the table a lot, building out business intelligence analytics and ETL packages and such, and you think you have all the definitions right, but then another department comes in and says, where did this number come from? It's not, it's not accurate. So you have to go back and trace it and all that fun stuff. So there again ties back to those stored in notebooks, code comments, and in someone else's head. And that impacts, trust in the data, trust in where it comes from. And ER Studio gives full table, attribute, and relationship lineage, eliminating that guesswork dependency on the tribal knowledge, as well as the compare and merge feature allows you to be able to trace model evolution. And the last trap number 5, standards after the fact. You're fixing naming conventions after 200 tables is way too late. Naming conventions, data domains, and quality rules are decided late after dozens of models and pipelines already exist. Retroactive cleanup projects take forever and a lot of times don't even get finished. I can speak firsthand from that. Thinking you're going to document a data model after the fact too. Nobody ever has time to go back and do the documentation or these retroactive projects. ER Studio has the ability to enforce those standards at design time, preventing refactor projects later. So here is a diagram of basically our ideal real world inside ER Studio and what you can accomplish with that. You can start at the highest level with your conceptual model, kind of getting the concepts by business process or subject matter or department, however you guys segment out your data. Then you can start adding into that logical enterprise level information from all your business sources. If you have SQL databases, Oracle, we support a whole slew of different data sources to pull from if you're reverse engineering and or forward engineering. And then from that logical model, you have the ability to go in and create these multiple projects, the source assets coming in for your raw staging layers, then developing into that silver data store where you have your calculations and definitions and different things, to finally that data mart, that star schema or data vault or whatever your end result is that your analytics hook into. And the ability to use our lineage of universal mapping and different things to tie those business glossary definitions and various mappings from the logical models down into those physical models as well for consistency and to prevent some of these traps from occurring. And just to highlight a little bit about our tool itself before we jump into the demo, ER Studio is basically 3 functional areas. We have ER Studio Data Architect, which is where all your modelers and data architects live, and they would be doing these modeling, creating the logical physical models, generating those submodels for the bronze, silver, and gold, reverse engineering your existing data sources to help drive some of that development, the compare and merge utility, all of that lives here, and it is, on your individual client laptop or desktop. Then we have our central repository that can provide that central source of truth for your metadata assets, model sharing, versioning. And this takes on a little bit of a thick client where you can check in, check out, everything's live, you're defining, documenting, designing, and storing all of that information. It really starts to bring to light that data democratization and getting that data out to your business users as well as your technical folks for that collaboration and making sure the definitions are consistent and mapped back to your models and all of that. That's where our web portal, Team Server Core, comes in. It is where you can share out all of the models, your glossaries, and all of that tied to your business terms, glossaries, and all that tied into your models. The repository shares all of those models out. So your business users, your software engineers, data stewards, all of those folks can collaborate and see the models and relate models and so forth out there. And then we also have some purpose-built integrations with data governance tools, Calibra and Purview, and more on the map to come. Now we're going to jump into that demo. So here, I'm going to pop over to the welcome page just so you can see. This is ER Studio Data Architect. This is our latest and greatest version, 20.9. We have added so many new upgrades and features over these last few versions that we can probably do individual demos on some of those actually, and I think we have out on our resource page on the website. But for today's demo, I'm going to highlight specific things around the traps that we've talked about and how the different features in the tool can help those. And with that, I do have an enterprise data warehouse logical model already built and open for time purposes. And then hopefully you guys can see this okay. I know the resolution for the screen sometimes with the webinars can be small. So I'm going to hope you guys can see this. Now today what we have here is I have my enterprise lakehouse model, and you can see here this is the actual enterprise level. We have some different business units broken out: human resources, sales, commissions, product production, or product information. Now with that, you'll notice these colored boxes, and we'll talk about those in just a second, but I'd like to give you the lay of the land first. On the left here, we have our data model tab, and of course you can see here on the top left, we have a logical model, and then we have a few physical models. Now, the one thing I like to point out here is a differentiator for ER Studio is our logical models are database agnostic, which means you can have multiple physical models across different database types tied to that single logical model. And we do have some of that happening. Sometimes people are reverse engineering a SQL database and then uplifting to Snowflake. And then you can have both of those physical models for Snowflake and SQL tied to a single logical model. So that is something that our tool does that our key competitors do not. The other thing I like to talk about here is you'll see we have the main model already built out, of course. And then we have some folders here that I've already pre-created. We have the bronze, gold, and silver, and a couple of other submodels here. And the submodels are what, clearly define those and help with that trap number 1 to help that sprawl from happening. So you can see those. And I'll go ahead, and my fit model has shrunk today when I resized the screen. So here is our bronze raw model, and I can duplicate the creation of this just to show you how it functions, but just so you know, we'll just go ahead and start with that. We'll go ahead and create a new submodel. So we right click here, and I'm just gonna name it Bronze Webinar for today. I'm going to click OK. And now we can go in and edit this. I'm just going to edit the submodel here so we can see the fields and the tables that we're going to bring into this submodel. We have been tasked with bringing in some information from HR and payroll for a commissions gold layer for the employees. So I'm going to go through here and click on the information that I want. So I'm going to bring in the tables here that I want to bring over. It's fairly simple, just making sure I've got my right tables that I'm hanging over. There we go. I think we have all of them. And product. And let's click OK. And then here you'll see, I'll just refit that to the scene. And you'll see that it brought all of those in, and we can change the layout here however you want to do that. We have various layout features and such. And so now we have our bronze webinar layer created. So that's clearly defined here. It allows you to make changes at a smaller level as well. The one thing too, anything in our submodels, if you make changes, if we go into this employee entity and make a change, it's not only going to change it here at the submodel level, but it's going to be reflected back at that main model level as well. So you're not having to change things multiple times and making multiple, having to touch things multiple times. It's a big time saver. Now, additionally, what we see here is these business data objects is what these highlighted pink boxes are. And what that does, if you'll see in the top corner, there is a small minus button here. And this allows you to minimize that. And we'll make that bigger so you can at least see. This is human resources, and this also helps you to be able to create those high-level conceptual diagrams without all the different attributes and such showing. So if you're needing to show that to a high level in a high level meeting where they're not wanting to see all the minutia beneath the surface, you can use the business data objects for that as well. And that is another key differentiator in our product, and that helps with the sprawl and being able to segment out clearly defined areas within the models and the relationships and such between them. So with that, now that we've built out that bronze webinar submodel, I'm going to go into the actual model itself, and we need to added product to that submodel. That was one of the things we were missing. And now I'm going to add naming standards. So as we come through here, we have a data dictionary tab. And this data dictionary tab allows for all of the different attachments and documentation around your model. So for instance, the naming standards template. If we want to identify and prefix our bronze table names, for instance, with BRZ, so that they're clearly defined in your database, you can come in here, right click, and do a naming standards template. And we can call this bronze. And then we can take at the logical level, here you have the ability to support upper, lower case naming conventions, upper camel, lower camel. All of this information is supported and can be actually saved off as a file and imported as well. But for this, we're going to label a prefix on these entities here. You can see you have the object types here that you can choose to put naming conventions on. Logical and physical models are the same way. And then we have ability to do physical mapping. And I'll open up that corporate standard just to show you that. And then the binding information, we're going to bind to the logical. And we're going to do it at the entity level. Actually, where did my submodel go? There we go. I'm going to do this to the physical level since we can do this. There we go, submodel webinar. So here we're going to be doing that for that submodel bronze webinar. We're going to click OK. And now we're going to come back into the model. I'm going to right click here and we're going to run that naming standards utility. And it lets you select which naming standard you're going to be applying. This is going to be applied to that logical layer. And we can hit that entities. Run that translation, and so you're going to see it put those there. So if we click OK, it's going to change that right here in the model. So if we zoom in a bit, isn't it zooming? There we go. There we go. Now we can see. It changed all of the naming standards there for bronze products. So now that that is clearly defined for you, so naming standards can be applied across the entities, the tables, and so forth. So I'm going to open up this corporate naming standard template just to kind of give you a little bit more of a lay of the land. So if we click on these mapping tabs here, you can see that logical layer has that business-friendly naming conventions along with the physical naming conventions are a little bit shorter for your DBAs. I know a lot of systems have limitations on table names and such. So this is all the different features that you can do within those naming standards templates. And you can save those off and then also bind those like we just did. Now, along with that, under the mapping, you have some additional tabs that allow you to handle invalid characters and your word separation as well. So we have all of that built in with these templates and then the different classifications and physical orders of such. So I always like to highlight the naming standards templates. They are a great time saver and helps keep things consistent when you're building out all these different models and key areas. Now, as we're moving through, I'm going to make sure we're staying on track. This handles traps number 3 and 5 as well, a lot of times. And then also in the data dictionary, we have domains. Here on the bottom, kind of toward the bottom left, you can set domains. And what that does is, for instance, this customer reference number, if we open this up, wherever that customer reference number lives, if it's across various tables, across various models, if you can, if you've got those related across that model, you come in here at the domain level if you need to make changes to the data type or the width or any of these rules, reference values, naming standards there again, definitions, all of that. If you change it at that domain level, it makes those changes across the board for every customer reference number and where it is currently living, basically. So that is another way to keep things consistent, enforced, and save time when making changes and edits. It also helps with the upstream and downstream visibility when it comes to the lineage and such, when you have those things documented and so forth. We also have built-in data security compliance mapping that you can assign to your models. It is editable and customizable. So all of these pieces of information is key when it comes to keeping things, within those data security things and data stewards and personal identifiable information. You have the ability to create all of these governance and attachments within our data dictionary, which then goes to preventing a lot of these traps from happening. The lineage, the duplicates, and so forth, and getting those business rules out there and owner assignments so that you know who's responsible and can go back and trace things. So if we're going to jump back into this model, and we need to keep things consistent between the logical and physical models. So what I'm going to do now is going to do the compare and merge utility. So I'm going to right click here and we're going to compare and merge this with our existing model because we want that raw bronze layer physical model to be updated with that new table. So here, if you right click and do that compare and merge utility, it takes you through a wizard. We use wizards extensively in the tool just to make things simple and walk you through the steps. Now here, since we're going from a logical to a physical model, I can compare against another model in this DM1 file, or I can compare against another model file I may have saved, or an actual repository file. Now, if we were doing a physical database, you would be able to compare to a SQL file, or even compare against a GitHub file. We do have connectivity with GitHub and GitLab in our newest version. And then if you so choose and have permission to do so, you can actually compare against a live database as well. So here we're just going to compare against the existing model. And I am going to go against that bronze main model here. We're going to, there are various things here that you can go through. I just keep things standard because there's a lot of choices, but you can go through and pick and choose what you're wanting to compare from an object perspective. And then of course, we can select all objects, or we know we need that product table over into the new model. So what I'll do is just hit that. And actually, we'll go ahead and I'll do one more folder just to give you the lay of the land. Now, all of these steps can be saved here in a quick launch file, and then those can go back to, I apologize for all those pop-ups. I closed my Teams, but it still seems to be popping up. You can save these as a quick launch setting and then call those back, especially if there's a lot of repeatable things that you do often. Then you can just open that up on that opening screen and run the quick launch file and avoid all the steps. So we do have different things built in from a time-saving perspective and duplicity. So now we'll see that the bronze employee and the bronze product tables do not exist over in that bronze raw physical layer. And we can either choose to delete from current or merge into target, or just ignore those. Now, if you do have mass changes, we also have the ability down here to set all the resolutions at once if you're doing a mass move or update. So we do have that ability, so you're not going through each individual one. Now, I do know that we need to get that product over into that bronze raw layer. So I am going to just merge this into target for this demo. And we're going to click finish. Now we should be able to go into this raw main model and where did it go? It should have been there. We do that. Maybe I didn't hit something correctly. I apologize. Oh, we did it at the do that one more time. Comparing against that model. Main model. I'll just go ahead and compare them all. It has it there. Maybe I just didn't refresh my model. Merge into target. Okay.
Hey Angela, sometimes they appear off screen, yeah. So especially change resolutions, yeah.
Yep, that's where it is. That's what I just happened to think about too. I was like, maybe I put it in the wrong place. I had it doubled up there. Well, zoom. There we go. So there's the product. I had double models in here. That's my fault. So here it merged that product back in the product inventory, and now we can continue to build out that layer now that we've got that in there. there again, the compare merge utility helps keep things overall consistent and updated, and making sure that everything is, in line with what you're building out and following, those traps, trying to prevent those traps from happening. Any questions so far, John, that I need to address while I'm in this section?
No, I think I've answered a couple that came in just about the bindings and things on the dictionary.
Okay.
But no, we're good to complete.
Awesome. Okay. So with that, I'll just keep moving. The other thing that I like to highlight while we're here is the repository. This you'll notice, because if we're wanting to check these models back in and save these changes, you'll see here on the left these green locks that are tied to all the entities in the different areas of the model on the left. And that is all tied to the repository. So we have the ability to, we can check this diagram back in. We can get new diagrams back from the repository itself. You have version history here, so you can see who made changes to what and so forth. So you can see I was in here and I made changes to that raw layer. You can also do version control, named releases, and all of that is available with our central repository, which goes back to keeping things consistent, shareable, allowing that traceability with the lineage and the universal mappings and so forth. Okay, so now with this, we're going to hop into that gold layer and kind of show some of that lineage here. So if we click into this data lineage tab, we're going to have that silver to gold mapping. So this is our visual data lineage. It allows you to bring in your source information here from that silver layer. Then you add your transformations and then show where it goes into that final destination of that gold layer. So if we click here on open up this transformation here, you can see all the different columns that we've mapped. Now, I ideally would do that separate. I would do my fact tables separate from the dimensions, because your fact tables are going to contain your calculations and so forth. But since this was a demo, we kind of kept it all in one area. But the commissions here, the commission transformations, you have the various different types of transformations. You can do business rules, calculations, direct mapping, group bys, hard code, lookups, and select into. So there's such a variety to choose from. Here we have this set as direct maps for today. And then you have the ability to put your business definitions in, as well as physical code, and assign data movement rules, and there again attach different governance pieces. If you have data policies or stewards and such, you can attach that here as well. So it's well documented and can be traced back for your lineage and such. And then the last piece from the tab here down below is our macros. The macros here are our automation features. They are built with WinWrap Basic, and if you choose to, you can, if you know Visual Basic, you can edit these. So if we open this, so for instance, here is a productivity macro. You can add table prefixes across your model. If I just maximize that for visibility, you can see the utility is built in right here at the tool. You can make copies of these so that you can edit them, create new ones. A lot of our clients use these macros for a lot of automation, and they can be called from the command line. So you can add things to a scheduler and so forth. So our macros are a big deal from an automation standpoint, and people use them extensively across the tool. And they do come with all of these standard out of the box. Metadata management macros from a lineage perspective, importing and exporting of things, as well as productivity and such. Now, if we move back into the model, you can see here we've built out a bronze raw layer. We have a silver layer here that looks very similar, and that's where that went. I hit the wrong model. Now I found out what I did. So anyway, we have the raw and then we have the physicals. Now we've been working with a lot of the logical models today, so I'm just going to stay in that logical data mart. Actually, I'm going to go into the physical gold data mart here. So we have our gold final physical model for the data mart, and we're going to go in and look at this dim employee table here for a minute. I'm going to pick on the employee table and just show you that table editor. Here you have a lot of features, but the key thing I want to show here is like the glossary and the definition tab. You can apply these definitions here and it stays with that metadata and creates comments here in the SQL code from the definition standpoint. But then also within this glossary, if we click on this add term, this is connected to our team server core. And you can see here all the different terms that are available, and you can relate to these terms and assign these in at this entity level. And so we've applied it, we've related the term employee from our human resources glossary here today. And so that is there. And if we choose to, we can actually click on that and it'll take us into Team Server Core. But before we do all of that, I like to show this Where Used tab as well, because this is part of Lineage. It will actually show you all the different models that this is part of and so forth. And the silver to gold and staging. So you have all of that lineage as well as all the different models that it's being used at. So from that up and downstream, when you know you're going in to make a change, you can see, how this is going to affect things. Again, you can also see the DDL. There's a lot of features here within the tool that can help build and automate as well as avoid all of these traps we've talked about today. Now I'm going to take us over into Team Server Core because I want to highlight the business glossaries and so forth. So I'm just going to jump into my team server here. And then we have this enterprise model. So you come into ER tools once you've logged in, and I'm kind of already logged in so we could get going and save time. If I want to go into this gold main model, there we go. And you can see the model is there. You can move it around. You can click in on it, but no one can change these models from Team Server Core. So your data architects and data modelers never have to worry about any end users, technical or otherwise, coming into the web portal and being able to make changes to the models. The models are there for viewing and information only. So if we go ahead and double click on that dim employee, you can come in and see all the different properties around that. You can see that definition, you can see the columns, you can see the DDL, where used. All of this information is here and ready for consumption. You can actually click over here to the left and look at those related terms. And you can see that it was related to that employee term. So if we want to follow that for information about how they've defined all of this, here we can go in and see that it's part of that human resources glossary, the definition, if it's critical sensitivity information. You have all of that laid out. In addition, you can open this in Calibra and open it in Purview from here. So if you have your governance already set up, we can talk directly to those two governance tools and keep the data updated between the two. Now with that, say the employee has children. If I click on that types children, you're going to see that that employee can be related to contractor, full-time employee. So it lets you see all the different pieces that may be tied to that one term. And then you can also click here and see all the different related objects and where it is living. So for instance, this employee term is related to our enterprise model. It's related to a CRM over here. I mean, you get the idea that this one employee has now been mapped to all these different models. So, you know, it's avoiding those sprawl and inconsistencies in the governance by being able to tie all of your business terms and glossaries into those models, logical and physical, and so forth. And you know, that is what I like to finish with, to really highlight the fact that I'm going to go back to my model for just a second. Tying back into that main model here. So all of this is our main logical model, and was able to generate that bronze, silver, and gold, both logical and physical, and then have all the business glossaries and such tied to it, and be able to check that back into the repository and save those changes and be consistent across your data ecosystem. I mean, that's the main goal for our model. And then ER Studio, I'll finish with ER Studio equals the trustworthy medallion architecture. You avoid the drift, you enforce the standards, centralize your definitions, you maintain that lineage, and you can govern that change. And that's how you avoid those 5 traps using our ER Studio Team Edition. And I hope the webinar went well today and that you guys got some good information. Are there any questions? I think we have about 10 minutes or so left, or anything else anyone would like to see in addition to what I've shown.
Yeah, hey Angela, it's Tim. If you could go back in on Team Server, somebody asked about seeing the data lineage diagram there, so maybe just show that we also published that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Here we go. There it is.
And you can click on those objects too to read all about it.
Yep, you can. If we want to, we can click on the transformations, and it'll take you into the information around the commissions. Show any inputs. It shows all the inputs and outputs, parent and child objects. This would have made my life so much easier when I was doing this. We had to hunt through Word documents and Excel sheets and various things. So, yep. Anything else we can show?
I think we're at the end of questions here.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone's time today. Sorry for the mini hiccup there with that product move, getting off screen there, but hopefully this was good information, and we can hopefully engage you guys with more demos for specific things that you guys might need. If this interests you at all, we'll be here to help, and reach out with sales@idea.com for a demo, an end-to-end demo that actually covers lots more features, but we usually have a little more time for that. Thanks again.